Hello everyone, and welcome back to Boss Economics World, the only show that slices through the jargon-stuffed steak of global finance to serve you the bloody, juicy truth. I'm your host, the Boss, and today we're taking a first-class flight to the land of haute couture, existential philosophy, and apparently, soon-to-be extinct billionaires, France. The date is September 29, 2025. While the rest of the world is sipping its pumpkin spice lattes, the French are brewing something a bit more revolutionary. The air in Paris is thick with the scent of croissants, Chanel No. 5, and the unmistakable aroma of a good old-fashioned class war. The government is broke, the people are angry, and the political class is sharpening its tax codes like a modern-day Robespierre. The central drama? Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu, a man with the political lifespan of a mayfly, is trapped between a rock and a hard place. The rock is the largest budget deficit in the entire Eurozone, a staggering 5.4% of GDP, miles above the 3% limit that Brussels pretends to enforce. The hard place is a hung parliament where the far left and the far right, in a rare moment of unity, are holding hands and singing a chorus of tax the rich. To pass his 2026 budget, Lecornu needs one of them to play ball. And the price of their cooperation? A piece of the billionaire pie. So, let's get straight to the point. This isn't just about a budget. This is the ultimate stress test for President Emmanuel Macron's entire economic legacy. It's a high-stakes poker game where the chips are foreign direct investment, the cards are tax proposals, and the pot is the future of the French economy. Will France serve up a wealth tax that sends its richest citizens packing for Switzerland faster than you can say capital flight? Or will they find a third way? Let's peel back the layers of this fiscal onion, and trust me, it's got enough layers to make even the most hardened hedge fund manager weep. At the heart of this firestorm is a proposal named after French economist Gabriel Zucman, a man who has become the Karl Marx for the Davos set. The Zucman tax is beautifully, seductively simple, an annual 2% levy on all fortunes over 100 million euros. Now, in the world of politics, a policy with 85% public support is the equivalent of a golden ticket, a royal flush, and a cheat code all rolled into one. An IFOP poll even shows that a mind-boggling 92% of Macron's own centrist voters are in favor. Why? Because the narrative is irresistible. For years, the French public has been told to tighten their belts, to accept spending cuts, to work longer for their pensions. All the while, they've watched the nation's wealthiest individuals, like LVMH's Bernard Arnault, amass fortunes that rival the GDP of small countries. Let's look at the numbers, because numbers don't lie, even if politicians do. The World Inequality Report 2022, co-authored by Zucman himself, shows the top 10% of the French population holds nearly 60% of the nation's wealth. The bottom 50%, by contrast, holds a paltry 5%. This isn't a new trend, but the COVID-19 pandemic threw gasoline on the fire. While small businesses shuttered and workers faced uncertainty, an Oxfam report from early 2024 revealed that the world's 5 richest men, a club Mr. Arnault is a permanent member of, had more than doubled their fortunes since 2020, from $405 billion to $869 billion. So when protesters march in Paris with "Take from the Rich" placards, it's not just abstract ideology. It's a visceral reaction to a perceived system of profound injustice. They see the government trying to plug a multi-billion euro hole in the budget with cuts to public services, and they ask a simple, powerful question: why should my local library close when one man's fortune could fund our entire national education budget for a year? This is the political trap Lecornu is in. He can't ignore this wave of public sentiment. To do so would be political suicide. But to embrace it fully could be economic suicide. Before we go further, it's time for a quick boss breakdown. Let's talk about why economists get so nervous about broad-based wealth taxes. France, you see, has been the world's premier laboratory for this experiment, and the results have been, well, let's say educational. Flashback to 1981. Socialist President François Mitterrand introduces the impotent sur les grandes fortunes. The theory was simple: tax the big fortunes to fund social programs. The reality? Capital, my friends, is like water. It flows to the path of least resistance. It's also incredibly shy and hates bright, taxable spotlights. What followed was a slow but steady exodus of wealth. While exact figures are debated, a 2016 study by New World Wealth found that France had experienced the highest net outflow of millionaires globally over the preceding 15 years, with an estimated 12,000 leaving in 2015 alone. Many pointed to the ISF as a primary motivator. Remember when Bernard Arnault publicly sought Belgian citizenship back in 2012 after President François Hollande proposed a 75% super tax on income over 1 million euros? That wasn't a negotiating tactic, it was a demonstration of the most fundamental law of tax policy: capital is mobile, labor is not. You can tax a factory worker's wages, and he's unlikely to move his family to Poland to save a few percentage points. But you tax a billionaire's portfolio at 2% a year, and his army of lawyers and accountants will have him redomiciled in Monaco, Dubai, or a charming Swiss canton before the ink on the law is dry. The cost of moving for him is a rounding error, the cost of staying is a perpetual, compounding drain on his fortune. Hollande's 75% tax was an unmitigated disaster. It raised a pittance in revenue and was quietly scrapped after 2 years, but not before it cemented France's reputation as hostile to success. This is the ghost haunting Macron's presidency. His entire economic platform was built on exorcising this ghost, scrapping the ISF and replacing it with a much narrower tax on real estate, cutting corporate taxes, and signaling to the world that France was open for business. It worked. Foreign investment flowed in, and unemployment, France's chronic illness, fell to multi-decade lows. Now, the Zucman tax threatens to resurrect that ghost, bigger and scarier than ever. As Arnault himself warned just this month, it would destroy the liberal economy. While that might be hyperbole, the core concern is real. If France goes it alone, it risks a brain drain and a capital drain that could more than offset any revenue gained from the tax itself. So, is the Zucman tax the only option on the menu? Of course not. This is French politics, a glorious buffet of complex, competing ideas. Let's look at the other contenders. Option A, the Le Pen light approach. Marine Le Pen's national rally, in a clever political pirouette, has positioned itself as the champion of tax justice without the economy-destroying side effects. Their proposal is more surgical. They want to transform Macron's property tax into a tax on financial fortune. The key differences? It would exempt a person's main home and, crucially, their business assets and a significant portion of their stock investments in small and medium-sized enterprises. This is smart politics and smarter economics. It targets what the public perceives as unproductive wealth, vast stock portfolios, bonds, and cash holdings, while protecting the family-owned business and the entrepreneur. It's a tax on being a rentier, not a créateur. Option B, the technocrats' revenge. Then you have the wanks, the policy nerds in the backrooms who argue that the real scandal isn't the size of the fortunes, but how they're legally shielded from taxation. Enter Charles de Courson, a veteran lawmaker, and tax lawyer Xenia Legendre. Their focus isn't on a big, flashy new tax but on plugging existing, gargantuan loopholes. Two targets are in their sights: holding companies and the Dutrial Inheritance Pact. Let's break this down, because this is where the real money is. Imagine you're a French billionaire. You don't own shares in your operating company directly. That would be messy. Instead, you own a personal holding company, which in turn owns the shares. When the operating company pays out billions in dividends, it doesn't go to you personally, where it would be taxed heavily. It goes to your holding company, where it's taxed at a comically low rate. This cash then sits in the holding company, accumulating tax-free. As Legendre points out, this cash can then be used to buy company-owned assets that look suspiciously like personal toys: a yacht, a chalet in the Alps, a private jet. It's a perfectly legal way to live a billionaire lifestyle on untaxed corporate profits. Taxing these accumulated holding company profits, or at least scrutinizing their use for personal benefit, would be a surgical strike on egregious tax avoidance. Similarly, the Dutrial Pact allows for massive reductions in inheritance tax when passing a family company to the next generation. While designed to help SMEs survive succession, critics argue it has become a major tax shelter for dynastic wealth, allowing the ultra-rich to pass on fortunes almost entirely tax-free. Tightening these rules would raise revenue and increase fairness without the headline risk of a broad wealth tax. This is the core debate: do you use a sledgehammer that is popular but crude and economically risky? Or do you use a scalpel that is less populist but far more efficient and targeted at the actual problem of tax injustice? The loudest, most uncomfortable truth in this entire debate is the one that few politicians want to talk about: the spending side of the ledger. According to the OECD, France's public spending as a percentage of GDP consistently ranks among the highest in the developed world, hovering around 58%. That's 10 points higher than Germany. This isn't a judgment, it's a mathematical reality. France has chosen to have a very large, very generous state, with extensive social security, public services, and pensions. The problem is, its tax revenue hasn't kept pace, leading to chronic deficits. Pierre Moscovici, the head of France's National Audit Court, laid it bare. He argues that at least 75% of the effort to fix the deficit must come from spending cuts and improved efficiency. This is the real political third rail. It's easy to promise taxes on 1,800 ultra-rich individuals who are, frankly, not a large voting bloc. It is infinitely harder to tell millions of public sector workers their benefits will be trimmed, or tell the entire population that the retirement age needs to go up again. Macron already tried that with pension reform and it nearly brought the country to a standstill. So, the tax the rich debate, while economically significant, is also a form of political misdirection. It's a convenient way to make it look like you're solving the deficit problem without having to make the truly painful choices that affect the majority of voters. It's a solution born of political cowardice more than economic conviction. The business community sees this clearly. The anonymous CAC 40 CEO in the source material hit the nail on the head. They might accept a new levy, but only if it's part of a credible, serious plan to curb inefficient and wasteful public spending. They are tired of being the piggy bank for a state that refuses to go on a diet. So, what happens next? Le Cornu will likely be forced into a compromise. The full-throated Zucman tax is probably too extreme for Macron to swallow, as it would detonate his pro-business legacy. But doing nothing is not an option. Expect a hybrid solution, a tax on unproductive financial wealth a la Le Pen, combined with a serious crackdown on the holding company and inheritance loopholes. It will be packaged as a major victory for tax justice, allowing the left or right to claim a scalp and let the budget pass. The ultra-rich will grumble, their lawyers will get busy, and France will narrowly avoid a full-blown political and fiscal crisis, for now. But let's zoom out. What's happening in France is not an isolated Gallic drama. It is a preview of the defining political and economic battle for every major Western democracy in the post-pandemic era. Everywhere you look, the ingredients are the same: sky-high public debt from decades of deficit spending, exacerbated by COVID-19 stimulus and energy crises. You have soaring wealth inequality that is fueling populist anger on both the left and the right. And you have an aging population that makes reforming social spending politically explosive. The United States has this debate every election cycle with proposals from Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. The UK is grappling with how to fund its national health service without crippling the economy. Germany is wrestling with its own debt brake. France is simply the first to reach the boiling point where these forces have created an unavoidable political imperative. The world will be watching. If France manages to implement a smarter wealth tax that raises revenue without triggering a mass exodus of capital, other nations will take notes. If it fails, and the policy leads to economic stagnation and a hollowed-out tax base, it will serve as a cautionary tale. This is more than just a line item in a budget. It's a fundamental question about the social contract in the 21st century. What do the rich owe society? And at what point does tax justice become self-defeating economic vandalism? France is about to run the experiment for all of us. That's all the time we have for today. Remember, in the world of economics, there are no easy answers, only trade-offs. The next time you hear a politician offer a simple solution, hold on to your wallet. Keep thinking, keep questioning. I'll see you next time on Boss Economics World.